My fiancé was in a car accident and suffered massive blood loss. I gave a large amount of my own blood to save him. But when he woke up, instead of being grateful, he accused me of sabotaging his brakes just to force him into marriage. He repaid my kindness with cruelty. After we got married, he resented me deeply. That resentment never faded, not even as I was dying from illness. Before I passed, he looked at me with disgust and said, "In your next life, don't cling to me again." When I opened my eyes again, it was the day of his car crash. This time, I didn't bother with him. I turned off my phone and went out drinking and partying with my best friend. When I opened my eyes again, it was already late at night. I was jolted awake by the sound of my phone ringing. Sitting up in bed, gasping for air, I looked at the screen and saw it was my mom calling. Without thinking much, I answered. "Emily, there's been an accident. Jack was in a car crash." My mind was still foggy. I asked without really thinking, "Jack who?" "Your fiancé, Jack Miller," she said urgently. "We're already at First City Hospital. He's lost a lot of blood, and they're preparing for a transfusion. You need to come now." Then she hung up, clearly in a rush. I shook my head, trying to snap myself awake, and it slowly sank in. I had been reborn. I rushed to the hospital, and the scene was exactly as I remembered it from my previous life. Outside the operating room, Jack's parents were crying uncontrollably. Nurses and doctors moved in and out of the surgery room, and each time the door opened, someone brought out another consent form. "Which of you is the patient's family?" "We need a signature," the doctor said gravely. "He's experiencing severe hemorrhaging and requires a large blood transfusion." Hearing that, Jack's mother broke down and fainted. His father stayed conscious but was clearly in no condition to make any decisions. Since my parents didn't have a strong connection to Jack, the hospital obviously wouldn't let them take responsibility. That left only me, the fiancé, as the only one who could authorize anything. But before their eyes landed on me, I had already slipped quietly into the stairwell next to us. Peering through the door crack, I watched them in silence. Jack wouldn't die, I knew that much. The hospital allowed people to donate blood in exchange, and there were plenty of shady underground blood sellers. If they really wanted to save him, of course they'd find a way. But the blood from those places wasn't safe. It didn't go through strict medical screening, and it often carried viruses like HIV. Jack wouldn't die, but he'd likely suffer from many complications. Still, what did that have to do with me? Sure enough, it didn't take long before Jack's mom came to, and immediately pulled out her phone, calling everyone she could think of. "I'm so sorry to bother you, but my son Jack is in critical condition. He's losing a lot of blood. Could you please?" The Miller family had many friends, but when it came to something like this, not one of them was willing to help. Watching Mrs. Miller cry until her eyes were swollen and then suppress her rage while making calls, I couldn't help but shake my head and sigh. There was no one to blame but Jack himself. With their family's connections, getting people to donate blood would have been a breeze. But Jack had always been arrogant and full of pride. He never showed respect to his elders and constantly acted superior. After he got a girlfriend, he became even more defiant, creating scenes without caring about the occasion, behaving as if the world revolved around him. He often gave the impression that he'd defy everyone for love. Because of that, all the people who used to hang out with the Millers, people who might have helped, were driven away by him. So when news of Jack's accident came out, none of them were willing to help. Only the past version of me had been foolish enough. Back then, I had barely recovered from a serious illness, yet I forced myself to stay on my feet and donated 500 cc of blood for him. At the time, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong. On the contrary, I even felt lucky that Jack dumped his little girlfriend right after I donated blood, and married me like it was the most natural thing in the world. I thought I was blessed to be the one beside him then. But I completely ignored what the blood donation had done to me. After that, my health never recovered. I became sensitive to the cold in winter and couldn't stand the rain in summer. My head ached year-round. My body never got better again. And by the time I turned 32, eventually I fell ill, so seriously that I was bedridden, completely unable to get up. And during that time, Jack stood in front of me and smacked the water glass out of the maid's hands right before my eyes. What exactly are you pretending for? He sneered, counting on his fingers. Do you even realize how much I've spent on your treatment? 300 grand. That's enough to buy me a motorcycle. You're still thinking about your motorcycle? I stared at him, my voice barely a whisper. If not the motorcycle, what else should I think about? You. Jack looked me up and down with undisguised contempt. It was just a blood donation. Are you seriously trying to guilt-trip me for life over it? Besides, if you hadn't messed with my brakes, how would the accident even have happened? And for the record, Willa told me she was the one who was going to donate blood for me back then. But you stopped her outside the hospital, didn't you? That was the moment I finally realized. Not being able to marry Willa Johnson because I got in the way had been Jack's lifelong regret. He even twisted things so far that he genuinely believed I was some kind of obsessive lunatic. So in love with him that I tampered with his brakes and then deliberately blocked Willa from donating, just so his body would carry my blood. So I could twist his gratitude into marriage and force my way into the Miller family. Hearing something that outrageous made my blood boil. Jack looked at my weakened state and spat out words sharper than knives. Just don't come haunting me in the next life, all right? God, what kind of woman stoops this low? And with that vicious curse, I finally breathed my last. Now back in this life, with no one willing to donate blood in exchange, Mrs. Miller had set her sights on the shady blood dealers lingering outside the hospital entrance. Only I knew what that meant. Once Jack received that dirty blood, it'd be nearly impossible for him not to get sick. I deliberately ignored the constant texts and phone calls. I waited until I knew they had paid up and finalized the deal. Then I turned off my phone, picked up some food and a jar of sweet soup, and walked over. Where were you, sweetheart? Why didn't you answer your phone? Mrs. Miller looked frantic, grabbing my hand as soon as she saw me. I have a favor to ask, honey. Please, give Jack some of your blood? I gave her a polite smile. Auntie, normally I wouldn't say no to something like that. After all, he is my fiancé. I paused, then added gently, but didn't you just say you already bought blood? How about this? Let them finish the transfusion first, and if it's still not enough, I'll absolutely donate for him. That way, they had no excuse left to try and manipulate me. I offered a few symbolic words of comfort and said, I'll go talk to the doctor about Jack. Then I turned and walked away. Mr. and Mrs. Miller thanked me over and over. I responded with the faintest hint of a smile on my lips. As soon as I stepped out, I powered my phone back on, opened a pinned chat with a cartoon black and pink cat avatar, and sent a single message. Hey girl, you around? Let's go drink. I didn't even wait for a reply. I turned my phone off again, flagged down a cab, and headed straight for the bar. I figured, by the time I crawled out of the arms of 18 male models tonight, whatever happened to Jack, whether he lived or died, would already be decided. What I didn't expect was that Jack turned out to be ridiculously resilient. After getting pumped full of that dirty blood, not only did he not suffer any complications, but he was bouncing around full of energy. Guess it's true what they say. Only the good die young. Scum lives forever. Anya, I heard your fiancé got hospitalized after a car crash, and yet here you are, coming out to drink with me? My best friend, Nina Simmons, traced a finger down the abs of a nearby male model as she sipped her whiskey. I waved it off without a care. Don't bring him up. Total bad luck. What happened? Do you know what caused the crash? I let out a mocking laugh and crooked a finger at Nina. My girl knew me too well. She instantly caught on to what I meant. I gave her a thumbs up. Last night, he got horny. He had originally come to see me, but I turned him down. This was something Jack only confessed to me near the end of my last life, while I lay dying in that hospital bed. He told me everything he'd done to wrong me, bit by bit, including the fact that the night of his accident he hadn't been driven by love, but by lust. He came to me because he wanted sex. I refused him, saying I didn't believe in premarital sex. He thought paying a highway toll was cheaper than paying a prostitute. And as far as he was concerned, no matter how questionable Willa Johnson's character was, at least she was cleaner than some random woman on the street. I believed, in that moment, that Jack never actually loved Willa. He was just selfish to the extreme. That kind of man didn't deserve to be hit by lightning, Being kicked into a pile of garbage was already too merciful. After hearing everything I had to say, Nina slammed her whiskey glass to the floor in fury. The shattering glass startled one of the male models, who rushed to protect her, scooping up shards of glass with his bare hands. I sneered inwardly. Exactly. I had a feeling that after this night of drinking, I'd still have a tough battle ahead. By the time I stumbled out of the bar, the sun was already up. It was the next morning. Jack had made it through emergency surgery and was transferred out of critical care into a regular room for observation. "I'm so sorry, Mom, Dad. I couldn't reach the doctor," I said as soon as I walked into the room. I sat straight down on the floor and started crying. I broke my phone. I walked all night to get back. My story was full of holes, but I knew my parents wouldn't press me. "Anya, what are you doing on the floor? It's cold," my mom exclaimed, helping me up with a worried look. "Sweetheart, you need to prepare yourself. The doctor said Jack's transfusion might have serious consequences. I know how deeply you care about." "Mom," I interrupted, rubbing the goosebumps on my arms, holding back a wave of nausea. "It's fine. I'm not upset." "That's good. Wait, what?" She started to say something comforting, then did a double take when she realized I wasn't faking. She took a few deep breaths to calm herself. All right. Whatever happens between you young people, your father and I won't interfere too much." That finally made me smile. In a good mood now, I generously decided to go check on Jack's condition. The hospital room was quiet, but before I could even reach the bedroom inside the suite, I heard a sickeningly sweet voice from within. "Jack, it just breaks my heart to see you like this," Willa cooed. I didn't even have to walk in to know it was her. That name, Willa Johnson, someone who tangled with me for over a decade in my past life, was now here, fresh and alive, right in front of me again. "I'm okay now, aren't I?" Jack's voice was soft, coaxing. "That's true. You're still as handsome as ever," Willa giggled. As they flirted back and forth, I twisted the door handle without any expression and flung it open. "Oops, am I interrupting your little romantic moment?" I said coldly to the monster lying in bed. The moment I saw Jack, I understood why Willa had been able to beat me so completely in my last life. His body was covered in real surgical stitches, all hidden under gauze. On his naturally dark skin, those bandages made him look like a grotesque patchwork of flesh, a stitched-up Frankenstein's monster. I couldn't imagine calling something like that handsome, even if I tried. "I just came because your mom asked me to check on you," I said flatly, as if reading from a script. "Focus on recovering. We'll take care of everything else." "Anya Chen, do you have to be this fake?" Jack cut me off mid-sentence with an impatient wave. "You didn't come when I was in surgery last night, but now that Willa's here, you're rushing in like a dog looking for scraps. Don't you have any shame?" He was furious. So worked up, he pressed his hand to his chest and started coughing violently. Cough, cough, cough. "Wow, look at you. All that coughing? Having fun?" I said with a blank face. That was the one thing he got right. I was enjoying myself, so I didn't deny it. I just lowered my gaze and said calmly, "Get well soon. Take care of yourself." Jack was lucky not to have had an acute rejection reaction, but the after effects were already beginning to show. If things kept going this way, it was likely he'd be a cripple for the rest of his life. A couple of days later, on my way to the hospital, I saw a crowd gathered in front of the inpatient wing. "What's going on here?" I asked a middle-aged man nearby. "Someone's proposing. We're all just here for the fun," he replied. Even though he didn't say any names, my heart skipped a beat. I squeezed my way through the crowd with effort. In the center of the circle stood a thin figure down on one knee, holding out a ring to a woman in a white dress. "Willa, will you marry me?" Willa Johnson gasped dramatically, covering her mouth with both hands. Her eyes sparkled with tears of excitement. "I will, Jack, I will." I sneered silently. Did Jack's parents even know that their son was now planning to split the family assets they had worked for all their lives with Willa? And on top of that, Jack was still technically engaged to me. Sure, it wasn't legally binding, but in our social circle, word spreads. It would reflect terribly on the family, so I simply stood quietly in the crowd watching. It didn't take long before a Bentley pulled up to the curb. "What the hell are you doing?" Mrs. Miller stormed out of the car and slapped Jack hard across the face. The force of the slap made Jack's eyes spin. He stumbled back several steps and fell to the ground. But he was still her son, and seeing him like that, she couldn't hold back her concern anymore. She rushed over to help him up, only for Jack to slap her hand away. "Don't touch me," he snapped. "Jack, you're still engaged to Anya. Proposing like this, how do you expect us to save face?" Mrs. Miller hissed, helping him to his feet and lowering her voice. "Come inside, we'll talk this through." "No," Jack said stubbornly, brushing off her hand again. "That engagement with Anya wasn't what I wanted. You and Dad made that deal with her parents, not me. Why should I have to sacrifice my own marriage for your so-called friendship?" Willa, ever the opportunist, chimed in. "That's right, Uncle, Auntie. Jack and I truly love each other. Please, just give us your blessing. Let us be happy." Mrs. Miller looked from Willa to Jack. Her eyes hardened with clarity. "You're really going to throw away your engagement for this woman?" she asked sternly. But Jack didn't notice the shift in her tone. "Yes, I love Willa. I want to be with her for the rest of my life." "Fine, very well." It was clear she was trying to restrain herself. He was still her son, and he had just been in an accident. She didn't want to push him too far. So she turned around and left with Mr. Miller, not looking back. Jack just stood there and watched them leave, not even making a move to stop them. I smiled to myself. I knew this wasn't over. Something was about to happen that Jack absolutely wouldn't be able to accept. About half a month later, Jack was brought home. Willa had been glued to him the entire time, tending to his every need. Jack was so touched he could barely contain himself. He even stood out on the balcony and declared loudly to the world that he would never marry anyone but Willa Johnson. I found it unbearable and simply shut the window. The Miller parents had been strangely busy lately. My mom mentioned seeing them rushing out early every morning for several days. I knew exactly what they were up to, but the timing wasn't right to bring it up. It would be far better if Jack discovered it on his own. Let the drama erupt naturally. What they were hiding was this. The Millers had been secretly supporting an orphan for many years. During the years I was bedridden from the after effects of donating blood to Jack, they once brought that orphan to meet me. His name was Ryan Miller. He looked, well, there was no denying it. His features bore a striking resemblance to both Mr. and Mrs. Miller. It had always made me suspect that Ryan's background wasn't as simple as they claimed. And now, just as I expected, the Millers were preparing to have Ryan replace Jack. Ever since Jack came home, his condition had worsened. The side effects had become impossible to ignore. He coughed constantly, sometimes even coughing up blood. He couldn't walk steadily anymore and needed Willa's support just to move around. And so, that day, Mrs. Miller came to find me, asking if I could accompany Jack to the hospital for a checkup. I didn't want to go. These days, anything even remotely related to Jack made me sick to my stomach, let alone being around the man himself. But I was too curious about whether his body was going to give out. And truthfully, Mrs. Miller had always treated me kindly ever since I was a child. After thinking it over for a while, I patted my chest and told her, "Leave it to me." As expected, Willa tagged along too, practically glued to his side. The moment Jack saw me behind the wheel, his face darkened. "I already ended our engagement," he snapped. "Can't you show some dignity and stop throwing yourself at me?" In my past life, those words would have crushed me, but not now, because now I didn't love Jack anymore. His words didn't hurt, they didn't even anger me. Honestly, they just made me want to laugh. "Jack, only flies swarm around shit," I said as I gave him a slow once-over. "If your mom hadn't asked me to help, do you really think I'd want to see you? You can't talk to him like that." Willa immediately stepped in to defend him. "Your families have been close for years. Even if Jack's upset because of his health, that doesn't mean you get to insult him." "You're amazing, Willa," Jack said, clearly moved. He cupped her face and planted a deep kiss on her lips. Then he turned to me and said sternly, "I'm going to pretend I didn't hear any of that. You should be thanking Willa." "You two going or not?" I asked with a tight smile as I leaned back and slammed my hand on the horn. "What are you doing? Stop that. It's so loud." Willa couldn't even manage to hold on to Jack as she covered her ears with both hands. Satisfied, I rolled the window down again and smirked. "Oh, now you know how to shut up? If you're coming, get in. I've got better things to do after this." Jack's jaw clenched with fury, but in the end it was Willa who gently nudged him. Jack, your health comes first. Don't let irrelevant people drag you down. I sneered inwardly. Health? That ship had sailed the moment they bought blood from that black market bank. Whatever they were hoping for now was already long gone. Of course, I couldn't be bothered to argue with them. I drove us to the hospital and watched as Willa led Jack from one examination room to another. As dusk settled, Jack finally received his report. In a fit of rage, he threw it to the ground. The white pages fluttered through the air, catching the attention of everyone nearby. I only had surgery. How the hell can they say I'm going to end up paralyzed? Jack shouted, furious and helpless. I want a second opinion. This hospital's just trying to scam me. The moment I heard the word paralyzed, I couldn't help myself. I burst out laughing. Jack? Oh, Jack. In my last life, I spent years bedridden, no different from being paralyzed. If this wasn't karma, then what was? I left the two of them there and drove straight to the bar. This was worth celebrating, and I was going to have a drink with Nina to mark the occasion. As for the look on Willa's face when she heard the word paralyzed, like she could barely keep her expression from crumbling, I certainly wasn't going to tell Jack about that. Let him learn what betrayal and disgust from those closest to you really feels like. This time, it's his turn. I told you Jack wasn't a good guy, Nina said as we settled into the same booth at our usual bar. She picked out the hottest male model in the lineup, and as usual, invited me to join her. Just then, my phone buzzed twice. I glanced at the screen. It was a message from my mom. I hesitated for about 3 seconds before declining. Honestly, there's still so much fun to be had in this world, I said. Nina sighed, frustrated that I hadn't yet fully let go. Don't pour your heart out for a guy. Pick one of these male models and you'll realize just how miserable your life used to be. I waved a hand. It's not that I don't want to. My mom's asking me to come home. I'm guessing it's about Jack. Nina knew the mess between Jack and me wasn't easy to untangle. She sighed. Fine, go. But next time, we're not skipping out. I flashed her a grin and gave her a promise as sweet as frosting. I didn't go straight home after leaving the bar. Instead, I decided to meet with Ryan Miller privately. If I remembered correctly, he was currently working as a manager at one of the Miller's hotels. These last couple of days, an idea had been forming in my mind. I walked into the grand, luxurious lobby, and sure enough, I saw a lean figure in a tailored suit inspecting the front desk area. That suit, I remembered it clearly, wasn't cheap. No way someone like Ryan, just a hotel manager, could afford a custom piece like that. But a suit like that meant something else entirely. The Millers clearly intended to groom him seriously. After all, if your own son might end up paralyzed, how could you expect him to carry the weight of an entire family empire? You're Ryan Miller? I asked directly, stepping up to him. I'm Anya Chen, from the Chen family, close friends of your Millers. I'd like to have a word with you. Ryan looked me up and down, then nodded politely. Of course, this way, please. Once the door closed behind us, I cut to the point. Do you know Jack's getting married? Ryan hesitated, his expression conflicted, but eventually nodded. My mother just told me. Jack's been throwing tantrums at home, insisting he's marrying Willa Johnson. Mr. and Mrs. Miller are both at their wits' end. Mom wants me to come back and talk some sense into him. After all, the Millers have a massive estate, and no one really knows whether Willa is just after their money. You know what it means that Mr. and Mrs. Miller have been grooming you all this time, right? I lowered my voice, watching him carefully. Miss Chen, what are you trying to say? I'm saying, I replied slowly, holding his gaze, that I know the truth about your identity. When I rushed back to the Miller residence, the argument was already over. I walked in just as Jack stormed out, slamming the door behind him. He held Willa's hand in his left and hurled his phone to the ground with his right. When he saw me, he spat out a venomous, bitch. I smiled faintly, unfazed. What was there to be angry about? His words couldn't touch me anymore. Willa looked at me with the smugness of a victor, as if she were saying, Look, the man you couldn't keep just turned his back on his entire family for me. I'm the one who's truly special. But I only shook my head and walked past them. Willa had no idea. Jack never loved anyone but himself. This tantrum of his wasn't about love. He was just afraid no one would care for him once he was paralyzed, so he was dragging someone else down with him before it was too late. Inside, Mr. and Mrs. Miller were sitting on the couch, completely worn out. Mr. Miller lit a cigarette, filling the room with smoke. When he saw me enter, he stared at me for a long moment, then simply shook his head and sighed. "It's our fault. We spoiled him." "What a shame," he muttered. "He could have had such a good life." "Uncle, Auntie," I said gently, "you're being too hard on yourselves. Jack and I were never that close emotionally to begin with. Now that he's found someone he truly loves, I'm more than happy to let go, and he's still your only son. If things get too ugly now, who's going to take over the family business later?" I kept my tone soft and tactful. Seeing Mr. Miller's reaction, his expression twitching slightly, I smiled faintly. That was enough for now. 3 days later, the Millers announced that Jack was getting married. The wedding would be held a month from then, and they started sending out invitations in droves. Practically every family they'd ever been close to got one. When my mom heard the news, she knocked on my bedroom door that very night. "Anya, do you think your Aunt Lisa's finally gone mad from all the stress Will has caused her?" she asked, deeply worried. "Should I call a psychiatrist for her?" I patted her hand and smiled. "Relax, Mom. Aunt Lisa knows exactly what she's doing. Just wait until the wedding. It's going to be a show." Ever since Jack had convinced his parents to give in, Willa moved directly into the Miller home. The two of them were glued together constantly. Occasionally, Willa would even talk openly in front of Mr. and Mrs. Miller about things that were completely inappropriate, like whether they should start trying for a baby before the wedding. She even brazenly hinted at her claim to the Miller fortune. It made Jack's parents so furious that they often clutched at their chests from the stress. But Willa didn't hold back. She only became more arrogant, barking orders at Jack as if he were her servant. Jack was clearly enjoying himself, completely immersed in the attention and illusion of power. The day of the wedding arrived quickly. Inside the lavish banquet hall sat nearly every major business owner and entrepreneur from North City. On occasions like this, the star of the show was practically guaranteed to receive support from all sectors going forward. No one doubted that. Jack and Willa obviously thought the same. Jack even boldly declared, "My parents only have one son, me. Even if I end up paralyzed, crippled, or dead, no one else is going to inherit their fortune." That outrageous remark earned him more than a few looks of disdain from the guests. But since he was the groom, and out of respect for the Miller family, no one openly rebuked him. The ceremony went smoothly. Willa stood on stage beaming with joy, already imagining her luxurious future as the lady of the Miller estate. The next part of the program was supposed to be the reception banquet, followed by the couple making their rounds for the toast. But just then Mrs. Miller appeared on stage, elegantly dressed, holding the arm of a young man in a fitted suit. Everyone turned toward them as the music abruptly stopped. "Mom, who is that?" Jack frowned. "I don't remember inviting him." "We invited him," Mr. Miller said calmly, "because he's the one this day is really about." "What?" Jack blurted out, confused. Ignoring Jack's expression, the Millers acted before anyone else could react. Mrs. Miller raised the young man's hand and announced, "Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to formally introduce you to someone very important, my eldest son, Ryan Miller." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Jack and Willa stood frozen in place, too stunned to process what they'd just heard. Well, I had no idea old man Miller had another son hidden away." "Exactly, you guys really kept this under wraps. Congratulations." The guests were all seasoned players. They instantly understood what the Millers were signaling by choosing this moment to unveil Ryan. On stage, Ryan slowly swept his gaze across the room until his eyes met mine in the far corner. I raised my glass to him, the wine shimmering in the crystal, and gave him a silent smile. Mouthing the words, I told him, "Congratulations. Don't forget our deal." The wedding reception ended with Jack and Willa's faces dark as ash. But aside from the two of them, everyone else genuinely seemed to be having a great time. As soon as I got home, I could already hear Jack yelling from the neighboring room. "What the hell is going on?" he screamed. "Who is this Ryan guy? You've had another son this whole time and never told me. Do we need to explain everything to you?" Mrs. Miller's voice was icy. From the moment you broke off your engagement with Anya and proposed to Willa on your own, you should have known. You were out of chances. Jack choked on his own breath. He clearly hadn't expected the parents who once coddled him endlessly to speak to him like that. This isn't up for discussion, she added sharply. Your body is still recovering. Go rest. Jack was half pushed back into his room. The moment the door closed behind him, a cup of water flew across the room and smacked him square in the forehead. You useless piece of trash, Willa screamed. Didn't you say that once we were married, the Miller fortune would be ours? She didn't even care if the Millers downstairs could hear her yelling. Now who the hell is this Ryan Miller? You lied to me. Jack touched the spot on his forehead where blood was beginning to trickle and suddenly snapped. Willa, are you telling me you married me just for the money? No matter what, he coughed between words, blood speckling his lips. They're still my parents. As long as I'm alive, they'll never abandon me. But the money's already gone to him, Willa shrieked, lunging at him. She didn't even blink at the blood on his mouth. You're nothing but a worthless cripple. Smack! Jack slapped her across the face, and then again, slap after slap. Willa's face quickly swelled up, red and puffy on both sides. Rotten, greedy woman, Jack hissed, stumbling toward the door. Everywhere I go, it's nothing but people like you. He coughed violently as he staggered forward, his steps shaky, eyes cloudy. Just as he reached the threshold, his skin turned a sickly gray, his body suddenly went stiff, and the entire left side of him lost all sensation. A loud thud echoed through the house as Jack slammed against the corner of a cabinet and collapsed, unconscious. The next time I saw Jack, it was back in the hospital. After publicly introducing Ryan, the Millers began bringing him to every major event by their side. This time was no exception. Ryan was, after all, their long-lost son, taken in by accident through a charity program after ending up in an orphanage. It wasn't until he hit puberty and began to resemble both Mr. and Mrs. Miller that they started to suspect the truth. A DNA test later confirmed it. Ryan really was their biological child. I ran into him in the hospital corridor. At that moment, Jack was furiously throwing anything he could get his hands on at him. Ryan calmly backed toward the door, and when he turned and spotted me, he offered a warm, unbothered smile. Impressive, isn't he? He said. Still, I owe a lot of this to your help, Miss Chen. He motioned toward the room. Want to go in and check on my dear brother? You sure do say that word easily, I replied coolly. What happened to him? The doctor said it was a stress-induced stroke, left side paralysis. And Willa? Ryan sighed. The moment Jack passed out, she grabbed the $100,000 in wedding cash, plus all the gold and jewelry, and caught a red-eye flight out of the country. Serves him right, I thought. A scumbag like him should have been locked into place the moment he picked her. All right, I'll go take a look. I added casually, I came with my parents today. It'd be rude to disappear without an excuse. As soon as I pushed open the door, an apple flew straight at my head. I dodged it effortlessly. Get out, all of you. Get the hell out! Everyone deserves to die. Jack shouted, but when he saw me standing there, frozen by the hospital bed, he stopped mid-sentence. Anya Chen, what are you doing here? His voice was hesitant. My mom asked me to check on you. Surprised? I tilted my head, letting out a light laugh. What happened to you, Jack? How did you let yourself get like this? He didn't answer. After a pause, he suddenly said, Willa and I never got the marriage license. I raised a brow. So? Jack suddenly spun toward me. The deep hollows under his eyes and his pallid, wasted face startled me for a moment, but he didn't seem to notice. Let's start over, okay? He pleaded. I messed up. I shouldn't have broken off our engagement. Start over? With you like this? I shot back, unflinching. Jack, look at yourself. You're paralyzed. You can't even move without help. What you're really asking for is a live-in nurse, not a wife. But Jack showed no sign of shame. So what? He said. You owe me. I heard it all from Willa. If you hadn't refused to donate your blood, my mom wouldn't have been forced to get it from the black market blood bank. If it hadn't been for that filthy blood, I wouldn't have had a rejection reaction or these complications. This is your fault. And besides, you were supposed to give me your blood. That's how the story goes. Why'd you change the plot? His words sent a chill down my spine. It wasn't just the mention of a plot. Given everything that had happened, I could accept the idea that this world might be some kind of twisted novel. What really shocked me was that Jack had known about it the whole time. Even in our past life, when I was bedridden for years after saving him, he had still chosen to torment me with hateful words. He was rotten to the core. "No one is obligated to save anyone," I said coldly, staring him down. "So listen carefully, Jack. I'm not repeating my mistakes from the last life. The tables have turned now, and this time, you get to live through the agony of being trapped in your own body, wishing you were dead." Jack Miller died. 3 days after I came back from the hospital, someone banged frantically on our front door in the middle of the night. "Come quick. Something's happened." He left a note, then jumped from the roof of the hospital. I frowned in disbelief. Wasn't Jack paralyzed on one side of his body? How could he possibly make it up to the rooftop and throw himself off? There was no time to think it through. I left the house with my parents immediately. What surprised me most was that Willa, who'd been missing for days, was there too. She sat calmly with her legs crossed, holding several life insurance documents in both hands, chatting lazily with the people from the insurance company. "Go ahead, check whatever you want," she said nonchalantly. "I'm not in a rush to collect, but please make sure you transfer the money to the right account. All the policies list me as the beneficiary. Double check before you wire anything." Meanwhile, Mr. and Mrs. Miller, especially Mrs. Miller, were crying so hard they could barely breathe. Their child was gone, just like that. Ryan stood quietly by her side, gently patting her back. "It must have been that woman Willa," Mrs. Miller sobbed, her eyes bloodshot as she stared daggers at her. "Jack just died and she's already here trying to divide the estate. She had to be involved." "Oh, come on," Willa rolled her eyes. "It's not like I forced Jack to marry me at gunpoint. Divorce and property division, those are normal. And I haven't even brought up the fact that your son used to hit me." At that moment, the police officer who had just finished taking Mr. Miller's statement walked over and said firmly, "We'll be investigating this thoroughly." Then, glancing at Willa with a pointed look, he added, "Miss Johnson, please come with us." I didn't miss the brief flash of panic that crossed Willa's face. I went to the morgue to see Jack one last time. His body was completely mangled, unrecognizable. The grotesque stitching that had once scarred his skin was gone, shredded in the fall. His bulging eyes stared upward, wide and unblinking, as if unwilling to accept the end. I stared down at him and murmured, "How does a paralyzed man climb to the rooftop by himself?" I sighed and pulled the white sheet back over his body. If you want to blame someone, blame yourself. You never knew who to trust. The investigation wrapped up quickly. Willa had thought her plan was airtight, but it was riddled with flaws. Confronted with solid evidence, she finally broke down in tears and confessed to pushing Jack onto the rooftop and over the edge in order to cash in on the insurance. Ryan handled the legal proceedings. Willa was sentenced to life in prison. But for the Millers, that wasn't enough. Their grief demanded more. So 2 nights after Willa was released on bail, someone stabbed her 107 times. Just like Jack, she ended up as nothing more than a bloody mess. After that, I rarely saw Mr. and Mrs. Miller again. It was Ryan I saw most often. As promised, he transferred 1% of the Miller Corporation's shares to me. Then one day, he came to me with a bottle of wine and asked, "Anya, will you marry me?" I paused, then downed the drink in one go. Without looking him in the eye, I said no. I waved a hand and turned away. "Pretend you never asked. Once I walk out that door, Mr. Miller, I expect you to call me President Chen. The world is vast, and I, Anya Chen, won't be bound by love anymore. All of that is behind me now, blown away by the wind. What comes next will be my brand new life." Bookmark.